So I've had a few comments and questions about how do I get my sound, how do I record stuff, and how do I get the guitars to sound like the way they do, the bass and the drums and all that sort of thing. So I thought I would make a tutorial video and just go through in a reasonable amount of detail exactly what I do to get my sound and how I record things. And yeah, hopefully it's interesting. And if it isn't, then what you gonna do? Okay, so I picked a track that I recorded and released a while ago. This is Bone Trousel from Undertale. Sounds a bit something like this. And here's the mixer. The software I'm using is Reaper. It's a digital audio workstation. It's free, kind of. What I'll do first is I'll run through what I'm using to get each of my tones. So how I get my drum sound, how I get my guitar sound, how I get my bass. First off, let's talk guitars. So this is what my rhythm guitar section sounds like. Pick another bit. So I'm using a Positive Grid Bias amp for all of my guitar tones. That's my lead tones and my heavy rhythm tones and my clean tones as well. I freaking love it. It's a VST plugin. So spoiler alert: all of my tones are generated using software. I don't use any outboard equipment, any hardware. I'm a software kind of guy. When it sounds as good as this does for the amount of money I spent on it, I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. The guitar tones that I love and that I'm inspired by are like John Petrucci from Dream Theater, James Hetfield, Metallica, his tone. That was originally what when I heard that guitar tone, like Enter Sandman, the Black Album tone, like my ears pricked up, and I was like, that is like, you go on like a tone chase. You want to find it, you want to try and recreate that as best you can. And then the same kind of thing happened with John Petrucci, Dream Theater, that sort of thing. So heavy, but also kind of crisp and clear, and not fuzzy and dark and muddy. It needs to be precise. So that's basically what I've gone for. So I've got a thing here which I've created this in Bias amp, and I've saved it as a preset. So it is the same wherever I go. This might be like a Mesa Boogie type thing that it's trying to emulate, but I mean that's kind of the thing I've gone for. And this is cool. You can go into power amp settings and change all this stuff, which I don't understand. And you can do the same thing with transformer, all of this stuff, which I haven't got a clue about what any of it means. You can change that. This I kind of do know what I'm talking about a little bit. So you can change what kind of mic you use, where you want it placed. You can change how close it is to the speaker, how loud the speaker is. It's pretty cool. Where the mic is in the room and all this kind of thing. You can change the cabinet stuff. It's very cool. For a VST plugin, it sounds great. I love it. So I use the same plugin for my lead guitar sounds. It's different settings, but the real kind of the 80s metal sort of lead tones. Again, when you stack them up and with all the delay and reverb and stuff. So that's guitars basically out of the way. And again, I think there's a clean section in here as well somewhere. Simple stuff. It doesn't need to be too complicated for clean stuff. I very, very rarely use clean stuff. When I do, I don't need it to do anything too fancy. So that is the tones for the guitars. And then the bass, I use a different plugin. It's Chris Lord Alge. It's a Waves plugin. This is great. This is one of the things where you can just set it up. You can crank some stuff and muck around with it, and it might peak a little bit here and there. And if there are any proper like audio production guys watching, it's probably seeing things like this might make you cringe a little bit. I'm one of those guys where I do like to do things properly, but at the same time, if it sounds good and there's red marks and stuff going all over the place, whatever. I'm not that fussed. I'm not that precious about it. And anyway, the tone that I get with this thing is just great. Not a very interesting bass line, unfortunately. Okay, this is about it. Hang on. Oh, hang on. This is kind of cool. Oh, here we go. This is a cool bit. So again, bass player, bass sound that I'm kind of going for. It's the Dave Ellefson, the Megadeth bass sound. Jason Newsted Metallica, that bass sound as well. I like playing. I play a bass. I play a lot of bass with fingerstyle, but I love the sound of a picked bass, heavy metal bass underneath distorted guitars. I just think the combination is just beautiful. And again, you know, I could play the whole thing in fingerstyle, but I just think that bite and that snap of the pick on the bass strings, I love it. I freaking love it. Obviously, wouldn't use that for jazz, but this ain't jazz, as you might be able to tell. So, and then drums, we have Stephen Slate drums, SSD4. I think this is like SSD4 Platinum or something like that. I don't know. But again, this is just one of those things I heard. I found a video of it. I heard a demo of it somewhere on YouTube years and years ago, and I was like, holy crap, that sounds good. And it was an extremely reasonable price as well. I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it wasn't much more than about 50 or 60 quid. So yeah, this is great. In fact, this kit, I believe, is based on... Whoa. I never used that tom. That's not even mapped to anything. It's actually based on, I believe it's Mike Portnoy's drum kit from the Dream Theater album Systematic Chaos, which is quite cool. They've sort of made it try and sound like that. And then I've done my own thing to it to make it sound a bit more like my own thing. So pretty cool. Okay, so that's basically how I get all of my sound. That's where the tone comes from originally. What I will do now is I'll break down what effects and things that I use, and just do a bit more of like a Reaper tutorial sort of thing. I'm also improvising this a little bit. There are no notes or anything, so if there's a bit all over the place, I apologize. But hopefully it'll make sense. And if you guys have any questions or if anything is not particularly clear, or if I've skipped over something, just leave a comment in down below, and I will answer it as best I can. Let's talk about drums. I think drums is probably the biggest thing that we can talk about here. What you can see here is just a drum track, and it looks like I've got one drum track and it's all running through one audio track. That is not the case. I've done a bit of hiding and tidying up on this view, so it doesn't. So I don't have, like, 7 tracks down here. I don't need to see any of that stuff. That's all background stuff. Here's my mixer. This is where things kind of get a bit more detailed. So essentially what I've done is I've split out my drums into 5 main channels. I have my kick drum, and then a snare drum, and then all the toms, that sounds a bit weird by itself. Then all the cymbals, which is all crash cymbals, China, ride, hi-hats, I believe, are all in here as well. Oh, you can hear a little bit of a bleed in there, and I'll tell you why in a second. The reason you can hear a tom drum in there is because essentially this is using overhead mics in the room that the drum kit is set up. So overhead mics will always pick up a little bit extra, but for the most part they pick up the cymbals. And that extra little bleed, it doesn't really matter when that's all in the mix with the drums in there anyway. You can never really tell. And then a room mic. Excuse me. So this essentially is just like one mic in the room of the drum kit, the digital room of the drum kit, which is just picking up the sound of everything. Which is cool. You can kind of, it really sounds like someone has just put a microphone miles away from a kit and the other side of a room. And that's basically it. So that's all, everything's split out like that. So essentially if you play it all together, you get everything. And what I've done is I've done a basic kind of get the levels roughly about right where I want them. So I've done some processing on the kick drum that I don't want to do to the snare drum, and I've done some processing on the snare drum that I don't want to do to the toms, etc. So I'll very, very, very quickly explain what I've done. First up on the drums is some compression. You can see the compressor is kicking in here, and this is how much it's working. Again, there are some numbers in here, and I don't want to go into every little thing, but essentially this is a visual representation right here and here of what's going on. So there's compression on the kick drum, and then there's some EQ. I want to give it a boost at about, what have we got? 60 hertz boost, with it sort of tails off a little bit here. I've also, this is quite a common thing, I've got a high pass filter running as well. So I don't need any of this extra really super low rumbly sound for the kick drum. I just want this punching right here. I've also left in some of these highs because I like that snap and that sort of that pop of the kick drum. The kind of high-pitched clicking sound. Otherwise, it gets a bit thuddy and you lose a bit of definition. That's essentially what I've done to the kick drum. Snare drum, similar sort of thing. Compression and EQ. That's basically it. Fairly similar sort of business as the kick drum. There is more compression going on the overall mix, but I will get to that in a bit. And again, with some EQ on the snare. Now, this is something that I didn't think about when I was when I used to mix stuff ages and ages ago. I found a video, I can't remember where it was, where I essentially did a lot of copying just to see what it would sound like and then tweaking by myself. And one of the things really that I didn't realize is that with the snare drum, it's a very cracky high sound anyway. What I like about the snare drum that I use is it's a well-rounded sound. So essentially, what I've done is I've given a low-end boost to the snare drum. I think I'll turn that off. You hear the difference between that. It almost sounds like when you put the EQ on, the snare drum's been almost detuned a little bit. The lower pitches come out quite strongly, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought that helps the drum sound big and massive, and not just like crispy and high. There's going to be some weird adjectives going on here. So that's it for the snare drum. Toms, again, I've got some EQ going on. That's about it. There's nothing really special to say there. Cymbals, again, there's some compression. It's again just to sort of keep it under control a bit. Not actually a huge amount, really. A little bit, but it does the job again. It's just keeping things kind of like rained down essentially. And then the room mic has got some compression. Quite a bit actually. It's kind of working quite hard. And then some EQ. And essentially it's a massive high pass filter. All of those low ends, I want to get rid of them. Those low ends are being taken by the close mics over here. And I don't want those in the room mic. The real magic for this whole drum sound comes from these 3 channels here. Basically, these 3 channels, this one is all 5 of these channels routed to this, and then there's a bit more compression on everything. And some EQ. Again, that top end, just to get the real high stuff cutting through the mix. Then we have some reverb. So again, this channel here, it's everything running through this one channel, and then we've added some reverb, and again, some more EQ to that reverb. Again, that tail off there where you've got some stops, you'll hear that there. This one right here is like, this is the magic sauce. This is parallel compression. Basically, this channel here is everything running, all of these drums, sorry, running through this channel. Then you compress the absolute balls out of this channel. By itself, sounds absolutely horrendous. There's a limiter going crazy here. Look at this. Jesus. There's also a compressor going absolutely mental. Look at that. Look at this. Basically what you do is you take a somewhat compressed drum mix and then a insanely compressed drum mix, and you put them both in, and then you can control the levels, and by doing that you end up with basically a huge sound. And that's it. That's how I do my drums. So the main thing really to take away from that is split the drums out into separate channels so you can treat each thing like you would want to treat each thing. Then run it all through another channel, compress the balls out of it, and then blend those two together. You can hear what it sounds like if I do like a comparison. So check this out. This is with the parallel compression. If I take it out, put it back in. So really, I just find it quite incredible how much difference that makes. You take it out and you get this kind of flat. It's precise, but it's quite flat. It doesn't have a lot of room to it. You add it in, and all of a sudden you keep that precision, but you add some real like weight behind it. And that's what I love. That is my favorite thing about this whole drum mix. So that essentially is the drums. That's the big part out of the way. Let's have a look at the guitars. So guitars over here, I've got basically a folder track. This these 3 rhythm guitar tracks run through this, so there are no effects on each track, but they all go through some compression and some EQ. So that compression is nothing crazy. You tend not to need to add too much compression on electric guitars with a lot of distortion. Just by having a distorted tone, you end up with a bit of compression in there for guitar amps, I think. I don't know. You'll notice I don't really know what I'm talking about. I just kind of make a lot of stuff up. But that's how I've always assumed it happens. And this is another cool thing as well. So basically, I hard pan my guitars left and right. This is a bit of a unique track because there is a 3rd rhythm track in there. Usually I only use 2, and when I do that, I have them panned hard left and hard right. So it just so happens that the nature of that riff, it felt a bit empty. So I added in like a middle track. Take it out. Put it back in. Again, you get that precision from the right-hand side, and you get the meat of it in the middle. So that's basically it. That's my rhythm guitars. Oh, and the EQ for that is yeah, loads and loads of the super low ends. We've got another high pass filter taken out here, and a low pass filter as well at the top because we don't want too much kind of that really super high frequency digital fuzz. Giving it a boost around the sort of mid to low mid, just to give it some balls, and that's basically it. That's my guitars. Clean guitars, there's nothing. There's literally nothing. They are running through the same compression and EQ as the rhythm guitars for now because I don't know. They probably don't even need it, but they do. So lead guitars, it's a similar setup as the rhythm guitars. Really, we have 4 lead tracks here. I don't know what clean lead is. I don't even think. Oh yeah, that's literally just another clean guitar. Let's not worry about that. We have 4 main lead guitar parts. Again, usually I use 3. This was a specialist track. It needed 4. So there are 4 tracks going in here. They've all got the guitar tones there, and they all, again, run through the same kind of thing. They run through a master channel with some compression and some EQ, and that's basically it. And again, with panning, we've got the rhythm guitars panned all the way out to the sides. So with the lead guitars, I didn't want to pan them in exactly the same spot because you'd lose some definition. So imagine try and get the camera shot here. Imagine the rhythm guitars are here, leads are going bang, 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 bang. So split kind of evenly a bit more towards the middle, and you can see that there. And essentially you end up with this kind of sound for the lead. Add the rhythm guitars back in. Bass, again, there isn't really much to say. That lovely bass plugin running through a limiter, running through a bass booster plugin. I don't know. This was kind of just shove it together and put it in, and it sounds fine. It sounds beastie. That I put a lot less effort into. It's pan dead center. The thing to take away from my bass channel is there is an awful lot of compression and limiting. It's just you want it to just be full stack basically. So that's essentially it for the mixing and the actual project setup and how I've got all of the instruments loaded and things like buses and masters and that sort of stuff. So then the trick for me really is like it's all about making like a usable interface, and that is why I don't have all of the parallel compression tracks on the main channel. I've hidden them. I've put in things into folders so they're a little bit more easy to see what's going on. They're color coded. Red is rhythm guitars. Yellow is lead. Blue is bass. Green is drum. What this allows me to do as well is, because I've just got the MIDI on the main track, I need to go in and edit some drums, double click on it on the region, and I've got the drums right here. All the guitars are recorded with audio, all the drums are recorded via MIDI. I can go in and I can add a bunch of stuff, remove stuff, move things around, change how hard they've been hit. I can also do that down here. So again, these are like velocities. These are how hard the drums are actually being hit each time. I'm going to undo that because I don't want to save it. And then the proof of it really is you go back and listen to it, and does it sound good? And if not, then do something about it. The other thing you may have noticed is that I'm using headphones to mix and record and everything. Several reasons for that. I don't have the money for massive, amazing studio monitors. I also don't have the room, like as in literally the right shaped room for that either. Unless you've got, the correct dimensions and the speakers certain away from the walls, it kind of like defeats the purpose. I mean, obviously you can do a lot with it, but if you're going to do it with speakers, you need to get it spot on. Headphones, you just need a decent pair of headphones. You can be in any room in the world. You'll get the same balance. I'm sure there are restrictions. I'm not going to argue with anyone who says it's better to mix and record and everything with speakers. Completely agree with that. But you know, I work with what I've got. I have a certain amount of space. I have a budget. I can't go crazy. So that just about wraps it up. Hopefully all of that was interesting to some of you out there who have been asking for me to do a little video like this for a while, just to show you how I go about doing what I do. If I have missed anything, if anything was not completely clear, if I did a terrible job of explaining, which sometimes I have been known to do that, please do let me know in the comments below. Any questions or whatever, I will read all the comments and I will answer them. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more heavy metal goodness, and follow me on Twitch. I stream on Twitch every week, at least twice. Usually twice, sometimes once. But there's lots of chilled out video game piano covers going on over there. It's good fun. It's good times. The link for all that stuff is in the bio. Until next time, thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.